others, right? 16 Mahajanapadas from the same lecture note from the last week, right? So I think we could finish a bit earlier today because we have a very short lecture note to discuss, as we discussed half from the during our last lecture, right? So today we were discussing about the political structure of the ancient India during the 6th century BCE. And within that lecture note, today we are going to talk about the 16 Mahajanapadas, right? So now let's look at what those 16 Mahajanapadas include, right? So if we take the 16 Mahajanapadas, they varies from text to text, right? So if we take several texts, those 16 Mahajanapadas would definitely varies from text to text, right? So tonight we are going to look at the 16 Mahajanapadas according to the Anguttara Nikaya. Within the Vinaya Pitaka, within the Sutta Pitaka in Anguttara Nikaya, it has mentioned about these 16 Mahajanapadas, right? So according to that specific Anguttara Nikaya, the 16 Mahajanapadas which have been indicated there, we are going to look at tonight, right? So if we take another, if you go through any other literature sources, you could definitely find some different kind of six Janapadas, right? So because the Janapadas, these Mahajanapadas varies from text to text, and we are going to look at the Mahajanapadas which are included within the Anguttara Nikaya, within the Sutta Pitaka, right? Right. So the however, we could gain a fair idea. So by looking at these Mahajanapadas, we could gain more a fair idea about political, social, and economic conditions which prevails during the 6th century BCE, right? So if we take a Mahajanapada represent a conglomerate of thousands of villages and cities, right? So Mahajanapada is a collection of thousands of villages and cities, and towns, right? So if we take these Mahajanapadas, if we take a geographical location, geographical expansion, right? So these Mahajanapadas extended from northwestern Pakistan to East Bihar and from submontane regions of Himalayas to River Godavari in south, right? So that is how it is geographically expanded within the Indian map, right? So if we take the Mahajanapadas which were included within the Anguttara Nikaya, Kasi, Kosala, Anga, Magadha, Vajji, Malla, Chedi, Vatsa, Kuru, Panchala, Matsya, Surasena, Asaka, Avanti, Gandhara, and Kamboja, right? Those are the 16 Mahajanapadas which are indicated within the Anguttara Nikaya of Sutta Pitaka, right? So within your lecture note, I have given you a detailed explanation for each and every Mahajanapada, but within the class, we are not going to talk about the geographical location, the geographical expansion of each Mahajanapadas. Rather, we are going to look at only the political and social importance of these Mahajanapadas, right? So you could go through the lecture note and learn more about the geographical locations of those Mahajanapadas. But within the class, I'm planning to discuss only as we are talking about as we are within the topic of political development of the within the 6th century BCE of ancient India. So within the Mahajanapadas topic, I'm going to discuss about only the political and social importance of those Mahajanapadas, right? Right. So the first Mahajanapada was the Kasi, right? So the capital was Varanasi. Capital of Kashi was Varanasi, right? So Kashi was famous for its cotton textiles and market for horses, right? So Kashi this Mahajanapada was famous for the cotton textiles as well as the market for horses, right? So this is the important from the economic perspectively importance within the Kashi Janapada, right? So economically, it is famous for textiles and market for horses, right? So it seems to have been emerged as a major town, even though within the 6th century BCE, if you take Kasi, it was not much popular. It was not much important, but it was emerged as a major town during the around 450 BCE. During 6th century BCE, Kashi was not much important city, but when it comes to the later on, around 450 BC, it became a major town within the ancient India, right? So now let's look at how the Kashi, the specific name was given to this Mahajanapada, right? So now we learned the fact that the Kashi was famous for its cotton textiles, and also Buddhist monks were called Kashaya in Sanskrit text. Right, so Buddhist monks were called as Kashaya in Sanskrit text. It is because they wore orange-brown robes, right? So they were named, if you take the Buddhist monks, they were named as Kashaya, mainly within the Sanskrit text, and it was because they wore orange-brown robes, right? So this indicates that Kashi was cloth manufacturing center and market by the time of Buddha. Right, so that is why the name Kashi was given to the specific Mahajanapada, because the robes of the Buddhist monks were manufactured within this specific town. Right, so that is why it was named as Kashi. And if you take the Kashi, it was economically it had kind of importance within the 6th century BCE. It was famous for cotton textiles and market for horses, right? And the second Mahajanapada was Kosala, right? So the by the 6th century BCE, Kosala became prosperous kingdom, having three big cities, right? So by the 6th century BCE, Kosala was identified as a big city, and it has a big Mahajanapada, right? So the prosperous kingdom with big cities such as Ayodhya, Saketa, and Sravasti, right? With those big cities, right? So I'm not going to talk about, as I told you earlier, you could go through the geographical location of the Kosala within your lecture note, and I'm not going to discuss those in detail within the class. And the next Mahajanapada, according to the Anguttara Nikaya, was Anga, right? So if you take Anga, Champa was the capital of the Anga. Champa was the capital of the Anga, and Champa has been considered as one of the great 6 cities within the 6th century BCE, right? So if you take Anga, the capital city was Champa, and Champa was treated as or considered as one of the biggest cities within the 6th century BCE, right? So it was located on the, if you take the city Champa, was located on the confluence of the rivers Champa and Ganga. It was, if you take the geographical location, it was located on the confluence of the rivers Champa and Ganga. And the importance of the Anga was trade and commerce was at a developed stage, right? Trade and commerce was at a developed stage, and many traders sailed through Ganga. Ganga was the river which was confluenced by, and the due to those rivers, right? So the this city had a good held a good position of trade and commerce, right? So thereby many traders sailed through the river Ganga, right? So if you take Anga, the capital of the Anga was the Champa, right? Champa could be identified as one of the great cities within the 6th century BCE, and within the Anga, it was situated within the confluence of the rivers Champa and Ganga, and trade and commerce was at a developed stage within this city. And the next Mahajanapada was Magadha, right? So capital of the Magadha was Rajagriha, right? So the and if we take the Rajagriha, right, so it represents earliest evidence of fortifications within the historical India, right? So through the excavations, it has found that the earliest evidence of fortifications, right? So fortifications were used to protect the kingdom, right? With big walls and all, such fortifications were there within the Rajagriha, right? So, but later on, throughout the time, the capital, even though the Rajagriha was the earliest identified capital within the Magadha, throughout the time, what happened was capital was shifted to Pataliputta. Earlier, the capital was Rajagriha, but somewhere in the 5th century BCE, capital was shifted to Pataliputta. Right? This is something important to note. In the Brahminical text, Magadhans were considered as a group of people with mixed origin and inferior type. Right? So within the Brahminical text, Magadha, the people who lived within the Magadha area was identified as the people of mixed origin and inferior type. Right? So why were they identified as mixed origin? This is mainly because the people within this area did not follow the Varna system and Brahminical rituals. Right? The people who lived within the Magadha, they never followed, they rejected the caste system, Varna system, and the Brahminical rituals. Thereby what happened was a mixed origin and inferior type people lived there. Right? So due to this, and also there was a fertile agricultural tracts were there within the Magadha. It was the Magadha area was very suitable for the wet rice cultivation. Magadha was suitable for wet rice cultivation, right? According to the fertile agricultural tracts. And also Magadha was important place for trade. During the 6th century BCE, Magadha was an important place for trade. And the next Mahajanapada was Vajji, according to the Anguttara Nikaya. Right? So if you take the Vajji, literally the meaning of the Vajji was the pastoral nomads. Vajji, if you take the meaning of the Vajji is the pastoral nomads, right? So Vajjis had a different kind of political organization called Ganasamga, right? Called Ganasamga, right? Vajjis had a different kind of political organization called Ganasamga, meaning republic or an oligarchy. We will be discussing about this Ganasamga in the later of this lecture note, right? So for the time being, just remember the Vajjis had a different kind of political organization called Ganasamga, right? So if we take the Vajjis, they represented 8 clans. Vajjis, we have actually came across the name these Vajjis, right? So if we take the Vajjis who lived within the specific Mahajanapada, they represented 8 clans especially during the 6th century BCE, and among them Lichavis and Gnatrikas were most well known. Right, so among those two, we have came across Lichavis in several times. We have heard about the Lichavis, right? So, however, they did not seem to have standing army or system of revenue collection from the agriculture, right? So, when we were discussing about the earlier situation of the Vedic society, in order to protect the king, in most of the cases, the Janapadas and all, they had standing army, right? So we talked that the army was there to protect the citizens as well as the king, and they were paid through the taxes collected from the normal people. We talked about these facts during our last lecture, and the importance of Vajji was they did not have the standing army, or they did not have the system revenue collection from the agriculture. Right, so we learned the fact that within the earlier situations, the agricultural share, the share from the harvest was collected from the king's granary by the several officers from normal people. We talked about that, but in contrast, when it comes to the Vajjis, they never had a system of collection revenue from the agriculture, right? And the important points to note that the Vajjis had a different kind of political organization called Ganasamga, and they were the most important. There were several clans within the Vajjis, and the most important clan was the Lichavis, and they did not have this standing army to protect the king or the citizens, and also they did not have the system of revenue collection from agriculture. Right, so that is about the Vajji. And the next Mahajanapada, according to the Anguttara Nikaya, was Malla. Mallas were also another Kshatriya lineage referred to the Ganasamga in ancient texts. Similarly, similar to the Vajjis, Mallas also had the political organization political system called Ganasamga according to the ancient texts. Right, so there were two main cities or headquarters within the Mallas, Pava and Kusinara. Pava and Kusinara. Right, so where the Buddha died in the Kusinara. Right, so we have learned about that. Right, the seventh Mahajanapada was the Chedi. Right, Chedi. Right, so the capital was Sottivarti. Right, so there were important cities within the Chedi, Sahajati and Triplini. Right, so we don't have any more information about the political organization or the social developments about these Chedi and some other several Mahajanapadas, right? So you don't have to remember each and every point of these. Rather, you could just memorize the important points of the political organizations, and so political organizations or the political developments, social developments, and the economic developments within these Mahajanapadas, right? So as we are discussing about the political, economic, and social developments of the during the 6th century BCE within the ancient India, right? So the 8th Mahajanapada was Vatsa, right? So within the Vatsa, the capital was the Kausambi, and it is also one of the most powerful territory within the 6th century BCE. And the 9th Mahajanapada was Kuru. Right, so if we take the Kuru, there were many political centers within the Kuru, such as Hastinapur, Indraprastha, and Isukara. If we take the Kuru, within the Mahajanapada Kuru, there were many political centers within Kuru, such as Hastinapura, Indraprastha, and Isukara. Right, so and each are mentioned as its capitals where they had their own chiefs. Right, so there were, according to the Anguttara Nikaya, there were three main political centers within the Kuru, such as Hastinapura, Indraprastha, and Iskara, and each and every the specific political centers had their own chiefs. And the 10th Mahajanapada was Panchala, right? So the ancient text refers to two lineage groups within the Panchala, Northern Panchala and Southern Panchala, and for these two Janapadas, or the if you take the Southern Panchala and Northern Panchala, they had separate capitals, right? So they had separate capitals. If you take Northern Panchala, capital was Achikatra. southern Panchala, the capital was the Kampiya, right? So if you take the Panchala, it has divided into two main territories as southern Panchala and northern Panchala, and they had two separate capitals and separate kings, right? So the next Mahajanapada that we are going to look at is the Matsya, right? Matsya. And this specific Mahajanapada was mostly suitable for, and it is well important for cattle rearing, right? So Matsya, it was important for cattle rearing. That is important in a economical manner, right? So economically, it held its importance for cattle rearing, the Matsya, right? So the next Mahajanapada that we are going to look at is Surasena. The capital was Mathura. Ruling family of Mathura was referred as Yadus or Yadva, right? Ruling family of Mathura was referred as Yadus or Yadva, right? So if we take the Yadva clan, it was divided into many smaller clans, right? So the capital of the Mathura and the ruling family of the Mathura was Yadva clan, and this specific Yadva clan was divided into several other smaller clans, right? So they too had a Samga form of the government, and this the Surasena, this specific Janapada, was well known for settled agriculture and pasture lands. This is well important for, it held its importance for settled agriculture as well as for pasture lands, right? So the 13th Mahajanapada was the Asaka, right? So we don't have any important details about the Asaka relating to the political, social, and economic developments. Rather, Patitan was its capital, right? So Avanti, one of the most powerful Mahajanapadas within, Avanti was the next Mahajanapada, and it could be identified as one of the most powerful Mahajanapadas within the 6th century BCE. And it had two main important districts called Ujjain district and Mahismati. Ujjain district and Mahismati. And the 15th, if we take the Avanti, it was well known as agriculturally fertile and had a developed trade system, right? So it was agriculturally fertile, agriculturally developed, and also apart from the developed agriculture, Avant had a developed trade system during the 6th century BCE, right? The 15th Mahajanapada that according to the Anguttara Nikaya, was the Gandhara, right? So this was an important place during the Vedic period, and it lost its importance within the later phases, right? So if we take the Gandhara, it was very important place within the Vedic period, but throughout the time, what happened was during the Brahmin and the Buddhist traditions, during the periods of Brahmin and Buddhist traditions, it its popularity, right? So if we take the capital was Taxila, right? So if we take Taxila, it is important place during the Vedic period, as we mentioned earlier. Why it was important? Because all the people gathered to this city especially for learning and trading. Taxila, right? The capital of the Gandhara. And the final Mahajanapada, according to the Anguttara Nikaya, was Kamboja. Right? So Kamboja was regarded as uncultured by the Brahminical text. According to the Brahminical text, it was regarded as uncultured. Right? So, but Arthashastra, so if you take Arthashastra, it is an ancient Indian Sanskrit treatise, right? It calls them as a kind of a confederation of agriculturalists and herdsmen, traders, and it's kind of a collection of several agriculturalists, herdsmen, traders, and warriors. Even though within the Brahminical texts, they have mentioned or regarded the Cambodia as uncultured, within the Arthashastra, Arthashastra is a Sanskrit text. It has mentioned as the Cambodia as a well-developed place where it has a kind of confederation with the agriculturists, herdsmen, traders, and warriors. Right, so that is all about the Mahajanapadas. Actually, I have given a very detailed explanation in your lecture note. You don't have to remember each and every point here. Rather, try to remember, if you could, when you write your answer, if you were asked to describe about the political development within the 6th century BCE, you could use only the political. For example, you could say the Lichavis, they had a kind of a different type of political organization called Ganasanga. Right, so if we take Kashi, it was a economically developed Mahajanapada, where it manufactured textiles, and it was important for, it had a good market for horses. Right, likewise, you don't have to remember each and every point. I have given the other details just for your knowledge. Right, so try to grab only the political, economical, and social socially important points to your answers. Right, so that is about the Mahajanapadas. Now, so far we have reviewed political developments, political conditions prevailed within the India. Right, so far we went through the political developments, economical developments, and the political conditions which were prevailed within the ancient India, especially within the 6th century BCE. Right, so with the emergence of Mahajanapadas and other political regions, several socio-political developments occurred geographically as regionally. Right, so among these 16 Mahajanapadas, there were 7 Janapadas which were which held more importance, such as Anga, Magadha, Vajji, Malla, Kasi, Kosala, and Vatsa. Right, so and these 7 Mahajanapadas held its importance for especially for wheat growing factors. Right, so these 7 Janapadas were popular for wheat growing areas, popular as wheat growing areas. Right, so and these 7 Janapadas were located within the Upper Gangetic Valley, Upper Gangetic Plain, and they were popular for wheat growing, popular as wheat growing areas. What are they? Anga, Magadha, Vajji, Malla, Kasi, Kosala, and Vatsa. They were popular as wheat growing areas. Where they were located within the Upper Gangetic Plain. Right. When we observe the traditional agricultural system within the India, rice output exceeded the wheat output. Right, so earlier we know that the agriculture was started with the cultivating wheat. Wheat was the main cultivation product within the ancient India. Right, before the 6th century BCE. Right, so but when we look at the ancient Indian agricultural system, the rice output was always exceeded the wheat output. Rice output always exceeded the wheat output. Right, so and also what happened was due to this rice cultivation, what happened was within the rice producing areas, they had a great density of population. Within the, if economically, if we take the within the ancient India, rice output was always exceeded the wheat output, and there was a high amount of wheat output was there, and also the wheat output always exceeded the rice output always exceeded the wheat output within the ancient India. As a result, due to this immense or the excessive rice output, what happened was the density of population increased. Population basically increased within the high rice output areas. Right, Magadha had easy and another important important point is Magadha had easy access to metal ores. Apart from those agricultural points, Magadha had easy access to metal ores, right? Metal ores. And these developments as well as emergences what ultimately resulted to improve the political and economical power. Due to these agricultural developments and social developments, what happened was they ultimately resulted to improve the political and economical power within the ancient India during the 6th century BCE, right? Now, when we were discussing about the lichavies and all, we learned the fact that there was a specific political organization called Ganasangha, right? Ganasangha, right? So, what is this Ganasangha? What is this concept called Ganasangha, right? So within the period of within the 6th century BCE, within or else we could say within the time of Buddha and Mahavira, there were two distinct forms of government. There were two distinct forms of government. This is important for your answers, right? So you should include these political systems when you are discussing about the political developments within the 6th century BCE, right? So within the 6th century BCE, there were two distinct forms of government. The first one is monarchical kingdoms, or monarchical kingdoms and clan oligarchies, or else the other political form was the Ganasangha. Right? There were two different types of political organizations. The first one was the monarchical kingdoms and clan oligarchies, and the second one was the Ganasangha. Right? So if we take the monarchical kingdoms and oligarchies, they occupied mostly these monarchical systems and the oligarchies, they occupied the Ganga and Yamuna valleys. Ganga and Yamuna valleys. They were there within the monarchical kingdoms and oligarchies were well prevailed within the Ganga and Yamuna valleys, and the other one was the Ganasangha, right? So this was well prevalent within the foothills of the Himalayas, right? Ganasangha was well prevalent within the regions of the regions where they were there within the foothills of the Himalayas, right? Foothills of the Himalayas, right? So if you take Ganasangha, it was inhabited by Kshatriya clans. Ganasangha, it was inhabited by Kshatriya clans such as Sakyas, Mallas, especially Sakyas, Mallas and Lichavis. Ganasangha, it was inhabited by the specific political organization was used especially by the Kshatriya clans such as Sakyas, Mallas, and Lichavis, right? So if we take the Ganasangha, it was organized within the lineage principle. It was basically organized with the lineage principle. Lineage principle is where from generation to generation, right? From generation to generation, the kingship was transferred, right? So organized with the lineage principle, and where the entire clan participating in the exercise of power, right? So that is what the Ganasangha means, right? So within the 6th century BCE, what you have to remember is within the 6th century BCE, or else you could say within the time of Mahavira or within the time of Buddha, there were two main types of political organizations. The first one was the monarchical kingdoms and the clan oligarchies, and it was prevalent within the Ganga and Yamuna valley. Right. So if you take the monarchical kingdoms and clan oligarchies, even though it was there, it was not that prominent and prevalent. The most prominent and prevalent, the political organization was the Ganasangha. Right. So the second political organization was the Ganasangha, where it was, if you take from the geographical wise, it was located within the foothills of the Himalayas. Foothills of the Himalayas, and it was inhabited by the Ganasanga, by the Kshatriya clans, mainly Sakyas, Mallas and Lichavis, and it was organized with the lineage principle. It was organized with the lineage principle. So what do we mean by lineage principle? The kingship was transferred from generation to generation, right? So lineage principle, and where the entire clan was participating within the exercise of power, right? So those are the two main political systems which were prevailed during the ancient India, especially within the time of the Buddha and Mahavira, right? So you should mention those two types of the political systems if you were asked to describe about the political system within 6th century BCE, right? About the monarchical kingdoms and Ganasanga, right? So, and there were constant conflict among these political settlements during this area, right? So there were constant conflicts, right? So there are several wars and conflicts were there during among those Mahajanapadas, Janapadas, and cities, right? So, and these finally ended up with the establishment of the Mayuran Empire and settled agrarian-based economy, right? So, throughout the time, what happened was if we talk about the ancient Indian history, finally it ended up with establishing the Mayuran Empire. It established the Mayuran Empire and settled agrarian-based economy, right? So economy was basically based upon the agriculture, right? So the main sphere of the economy was the agriculture within the ancient India, right? Main sphere of the, if you were asked to talk about the economy, then you should indicate that the main sphere of the economy of within the ancient India was the agriculture. There was the agriculture-based economy during the 6th century BCE, right? So this economy made possible to support large standing army to defend the territories, right? So what happened throughout the time was the economy was developed. The agriculture, due to the developments of the agriculture, the economy developed, right? So territory had, or the governments had enough money to support the standing army to protect the citizens. Now, earlier, during the Vedic period, what happened was, even though the kings wanted to protect themselves as well as the citizens, they did not have the money to pay those armies. They were not capable to pay those armies. So in order to pay those armies, what they did was they collected tax from the normal people, right? We talked about that, right? So, but what happened was, throughout the time, the agriculture was developed. Thereby what happened was the economy was developed, right? So due to these economic developments, what happened was the government had enough money. Government were able to make enough money to pay the standing army, right? So thereby the governments were able to defend the territories without collecting any taxes from the people. Due to the economic developments, they had enough money to pay to the army. Thereby they could easily defend their territories with those armies, right? So during the times of Buddha and Mahavira, iron also, the contribution of iron was also developed. Using iron was also developed within the Buddha and Mahavira, right? So economic expansion due to agriculture was noticeable, right? So as we discussed earlier, economic expansion or economic development was basically occurred due to the agriculture, right? So agriculture was the main sphere of the economy within the ancient India, right? So among them, the developments occurred as a result of rice cultivation, right? So if we take the economy of the ancient India, main economic sphere was the agriculture within the ancient India, right? So if we take the agriculture was basically developed due to the rice cultivation. There were other cultivations as well, wheat and so far, but mainly the agriculture was depend upon the rice cultivation, right? Due to the rice cultivation, what happened was, due to the massive rice cultivation, the agriculture developed, and due to the agricultural development, the entire economy was developed within the ancient India, right? Right. Along with the agricultural expanded settlements, then it led to increase the craft production, right? So even though the agriculture was the main sphere of the economy, it was not only the economic sphere within the society, rather there were craft productions, right? So there were several craft productions were there within the ancient India, apart from the agricultural developments, right? So, and this finally resulted in coinage, signifying the money economy, right? So we talked about this during last week. Coinage, due to the coinage, it developed to the money economy, and we could see fair developments within the trade and trade routes. Trade routes were developed within the 6th century BCE, and also developments of the commercial corporate activities. We could see developments of the corporate and commercial activities. Right. So finally, what happened was, due to these agricultural developments, especially due to the massive amount of rice cultivation, wheat cultivation, right? So and also the craft production. What happened was, the entire economy was developed within the ancient India, and also due to these developments, coinage came into practice, and this signifies the money economy, and also development of trade and trade routes. Apart from that, development of commercial corporate activities were occurred during this phase. And within the age of Buddha, this age, according to Buddha had referred as the period of second urbanization. This specific period, due to these developments, Buddha had identified this period as the period of second urbanization. Right? So within the Hindu civilization, we talked about the first urbanization within the Indian history, and the Buddha has identified the 6th century BCE, this specific phase, due to the economic developments, as the second phase of the second period, the period of second urbanization, right? So, and also, if we take a sum up of the 6th century BCE, political developments occurred. If we take a summary to the 6th century BCE, political developments occurred. Socio-economic developments occurred. Apart from the political developments, socio-economic developments occurred. And apart from that, several religions, right? We have already talked about this. Several heterodox philosophies were appeared, right? So political developments were there, socio-economic developments were occurred, and apart from that, basically, the several philosophies, heterodox philosophies came into appearance, right? So we have already talked about the main 6 heterodox philosophies which were appeared within the 6th century BCE, right? So due to the especially due to the rise of Buddhism, people seek peace than war. People seeked peace than war, right? So we learned the fact that due to these developments and all, due to these the organizations and developments, many conflicts were occurred among these Janapadas and Mahajanapadas, or cities or whatever, right? So the number of conflicts were increased, right? But due to the rise of Buddhism, what happened was, people seek peace than war during the 6th century BCE, right? So Buddha always went from town to town, spreading the message to all the people, irrespective of the class, caste, sex, or race, right? So irrespective of the class, caste, or whatever, Buddha equally spread the message or the doctrine to the people, right? So Buddha treated all these people equally because Buddha was well aware with the fact that all these social arrangements were man-made, right? So this is the final point to note, right? So now we learned that the several classes, several castes, and the several social hierarchies, several political organizations were there, several Janapadas, Mahajanapadas, etc. Right? So several organizations were there, right? But still, Buddha treated all these organizations and people equally because Buddha was well aware that all these arrangements were man-made. All these arrangements were man-made, and Buddha treated as all were equal, right? So thereby, what Buddha did was Buddha equally spread the message to each and everyone within the society, right? So that is all about the political organization or last topic, right? So actually you don't have to keep the each and every point in your mind. Rather, as we discussed about the political developments, political, social, and economic developments, try to point out the important points which are relating to the question, right? So there is a high possibility to get a get a question regarding the political developments within the 6th century BCE, right? So where you could insert these points to your answer, right? So for example, you could say there are many to include. For example, within the political, or if you were asked to describe about the political organization, you could say there were two main political organizations were there within the 6th century BCE: monarchical kingdoms and clan oligarchies and Ganasangha, right? So then you could describe them in detail, right? So likewise, right? So as I told you earlier, there is a high possibility to get a question regarding the political developments within the 6th century BCE, right? So thereby go through the lecture notes again and again, right? And that is all for all about the today's lecture, and this is our final lecture. And okay, right, so I will finish the class today, and before that, next week you don't have any classes. It will be a holiday for you next Tuesday. And the next thing I want you to tell you that by Thursday I will send you all the possible exam questions that you could get as revision questions, right? So by Thursday I will send you, Thursday or Friday, right? So I'm still studying on those questions, right? So by Thursday or Friday I will send you all the revision questions, right? So once you get those revision questions, you have to answer them all, right? You have to answer this, right? So if you could then send me the answers, I could go through. And from next week, you will not have the classes. And week after next week, I will start my revision class, which is 25th. Right, so from 25th onwards, I'm planning to start your revision class the same time, Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Right, so the revision questions which I will send you next week, I'm planning to discuss each and every question within the class. Right, so you have to answer them. If you are able to send the answers to me, send them if you can, but you should write the answers to all the questions, right? You should write them, because I'm not going to teach you. I will ask the answers from each and everyone, right? So I'm not going to teach you. I'm going to ask the answers from you within the class when we are discussing the answers, right? Thereby you should answer the questions, right? So by answering them, you should definitely get similar questions at the exam, right? So thereby it will be a great practice for you, right? So answer the questions, you will get definitely the similar questions in your exams. Then you don't have to worry, then you don't have to study again and again, right? So the answering those questions will be enough to get ready for your exam, right? So I will send the revision questions most probably by Thursday or Friday, right? So then the next week you won't have classes. Allocate that time or the entire week to answer those questions, and our first revision class will be held on 25th of the 25th of this month, and I'm planning to have 3 revision classes, 25th, 1st and 8th, 25th of October, 1st of November, 8th of November. And for other classes also, you will have your lectures, and I have no idea about the other lectures, right? So the most probably you will get 2 weeks study leave starting from 15th or 20th. I will check it and let you know, right? So of November, you will have, after finishing all the revisions and all, you will get a 2 weeks of revision, right? So thereby I'm planning to finish my revision by most probably 8, because I'm planning to go to Sri Lanka by the 2nd or 3rd week of the November, right? So before that I'm planning to finish all your revisions before I leave the country, right? So that is all about today. And Thursday or Friday, definitely I will send you the revision questions. Go through them, write the answers, right? So, and we will be discussing the questions or the answers, and our first revision class will be on the 25th of the October, right? So get ready for that. Study well, go through your lecture notes, write answers, and study well. Right. Thank you very much for joining
Thank you
with me.
very
If you have
much.
any question, just email me. Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you very much. Good night. Good night. Good night.